Oh, yes, hello. Caught me napping there for a moment. I'm still a bit haggard. Last night was the opening night for Halloween Horror Nights 20. 20 years of fear, a new era of darkness. Or is that new age of darkness? I mean, it was always era before and all the publicity stuff, but now it's age on the t-shirts. Of course, the t-shirts were made a while back, so maybe it was age first and they switched it to era. I don't know. At any rate, I told my friend Rob he should get a t-shirt and put an R in front of it so it says a new rage of darkness, because if you know who I'm talking about, that's funny. But enough of that. We continue with the events of my Horror Nights history, and the next one for me to do, of course, would be Halloween Horror Nights 9, Last Gasp, from the year 1999. But it may take me a while to actually get to it, because I do get a bit long-winded, and there's some other things I need to discuss preliminary before we get to that, and it's possible that I'll use up these first 15 minutes before even talking about 1999's event. Well, first of all, I want to go back and talk a little bit more about 1998, because there's some things I forgot to mention on my previous videos. So let's first go back and take one more brief look at Halloween Horror Nights 8, Primal Scream, in 1998. Well, what I didn't say on the previous video, especially talking about the Bill and Ted show, I failed to mention the gags in that year's event that were related to the then current hit film, The Wedding Singer, starring Adam Sandler. In addition to the character played by Adam Sandler in The Wedding Singer showing up in the big musical ending of the climax of the show, with him singing the song from the movie, "You Spin Me Right Round Like a Record." And let me just explain to the young people, that's not a Flo Rida song. I mean, he does have a song, "You Spin Me Round," which is appropriated. Oh, that's a bad word. Sample, that's the correct word. The hip-hop people like to say sampled instead of appropriate or rip off or anything rude like that, in reference to the using someone else's song as if it were their own song. But yeah, in the 1980s there was a band called Dead or Alive, which had a couple of hits, and the biggest hit was "You Spin Me Right Round Like a Record," and that was, of course, what Adam Sandler was referencing back in 1998, about 10 years before more than 10 years before Flo Rida ever came around to sing the other thing, to utilize those lyrics and melody in his own version. So yeah, and Dead or Alive are an interesting band. We always assumed the lead singer was simply a gay man at the time, but apparently that was incorrect. I may be wrong, I may have misremembered something, but it seems to me that that fellow, whose name escapes me, actually was not a gay man at all, but a heterosexual woman who'd been born with the wrong equipment, basically. That's right, a transsexual, not a homosexual. So in fact, was a straight woman in the wrong body, and has since gone through gender reassignment surgery and treatment, and is now living as a woman. I don't know if she's still doing any music, but that's a little bit of trivia, musical trivia, for those of you who like musical trivia of various kinds. At any rate, it was very well done in the Bill and Ted show, and was quite funny, connecting to the movie. There was another gag from the movie as well. If you'd seen the movie, and in fact you young kids may not even remember this movie, but if you've seen the movie, there was a very funny bit of shtick involving an old lady rapping to the Sugar Hill Gang's classic hip-hop song, Rapper's Delight. Now this is old, really freaking old school, because that was a hit back when I was in high school, you know, and a lot of you young kids weren't even born yet. Yeah, hip hop is older than you think, innit? Yeah, and therefore, um, it really was, and performed quite hysterically funny. In the Bill and Ted show, what they did was they had, I mentioned before that they had the Titanic characters, and they had Rose as an old woman from the film Titanic performing the Rapper's Delight uh, in the Bill and Ted show, and that was quite hysterical and well done. Um, all right, because the Bill and Ted show was a lot funnier in those days, or perhaps I was younger and the jokes were funnier to me. I don't know. That's something, you know, people say, oh, the shows today aren't as good. I actually liked last night's show, though a lot of people hated it. My friend Rob said it was the best Bill and Ted show in the past few years, better than last year's by far. And he's a really harsh critic, so but other people really hated it and said this isn't very funny. They're just going back to the shtick they used to do, and I don't know. I liked it, but I think the show's probably going to get tweaked a bit before the end of the season, of the current show. But I'm supposed to be talking about the '98 show, wasn't I? I'm done talking about the '98 show now. One other thing about 1998. I've mentioned a few times previously, elsewhere, and also I think in previous videos, that outside of Halloween Horror Nights itself, I have probably been to Universal Orlando, the theme park, Universal Studios, Florida, actually, at Universal Orlando Resort. The theme park is Universal Orlando, Florida, okay? A lot of people say USO talking about the theme park. USO is actually the whole bloody resort, Universal Studios Orlando Resort. Okay, just to clarify that. But in 1998, of course, he just called it Universal Studios Florida because that was it. But, and that's kind of where I'm going here, because but in my whole 20 years of going to this park, outside of the Halloween Horror Nights event itself, doing regular operating hours in the daytime, just going in as a regular day guest, I can probably count the number of times I've done that on the fingers of one hand, including a trip I took, I think, last year. So that's pretty amazing. I really don't do the parks as much as I do Halloween Horror Nights. Islands of Adventure, I've been a few more times than that, but still, no, not very. I'm probably less than 10 times all told. But at that time in 1998, I probably hadn't been to the park since '97 when I was at Frightmares, and apparently I missed something that I saw for the first time when I was at Halloween Horror Nights in 1998, and that was going up around the Confrontation ride. Today, Mummy takes up the whole space, including the Paradise Theatre space, is where you actually enter the Mummy. But back then, Confrontation, you entered on the other side, and that space where the Paradise Theatre thing is, that was something else. That was a video, make your own video attraction, and it was themed to Star Trek. And you would go in there and you make a video like you were in Star Trek, and you put on the costume and you transporter, and then you have your own little VHS, because this was the 1990s, VHS of yourself as a character in Star Trek, which would give you a huge nerdgasm. Although I am a huge nerd, I never actually did that, because again, I didn't go to the park that often. But I noticed it wasn't there that night in 1998. I said, well, that's not there. And so me and my friends went in to take a look to see what was there, and what we saw was a huge presentation about something new. A new theme park that was going to be built adjacent to Universal Studios Florida. A second theme park, just like Disney had all those extra theme parks they've added since the Magic Kingdom. Now Universal was going to do that too, and turn their resort into a huge theme park complex instead of just one theme park. And that was really interesting. And so I went in there and for the first time saw stuff about Islands of Adventure, about there'd be all these different islands, and each one would have its own theme. There would be something about Marvel superheroes in one section, and Dr. Seuss in another. There would be newspaper comic strip characters in one section, and there would be there would be Jurassic Park in another section, and there would be one that was all based on legends and mythology and fantasy, which interested me very much. especially when I saw the designs and diagrams and had this weird feeling of deja vu. Yeah, you see, I mentioned elsewhere earlier, probably in another video, that I had originally, when I arrived in Florida in 1991, the same year that Halloween Horror Nights started, I was a security host at Disney. In those days I would be sent from, I never knew where I'd be working from one day to the next, and it just so happened that year that there was a brand new Imagineering building opened up at Disney behind the Magic Kingdom. This brand new facility for Disney's Imagineers to design all the new exciting and wonderful attractions. And since the building was so new, they hadn't put in their security systems and locks and things yet. So they needed to have a living security host to stay in that building overnight every night. And there were a couple of nights that year that that person was me, because whoever was doing that regularly was on vacation or something. So I went in that and did that for 2 nights. Now, it would have been wrong, very, very wrong, for me to poke around, look under things and open cabinets and sneaky peeky. No. And so I did not do that, because I was a very good security host. But also because I was a very good security host, I realized that my job meant being aware of everything that I could see and knowing it, because observation is the key to security. You need to, if you see somebody and then later on that person turns out to be a bank robber, you need to remember what they look like and everything. This is part of, all law enforcement and that sort of thing. Observation is key. So I took in everything that I saw in case I came back to the same room later on my rounds and something had changed or been moved because an interloper had interloped and done something. I would immediately notice that wasn't there before, that was over here. It's important to know that. So I did take a look at what I could see in plain sight. And oh, it isn't my fault that Imagineers left things out on their desks and left things on billboard, on boards, where anyone in the room, without touching anything, could just look and see them. And so I did see some very interesting diagrams for an upcoming theme park yet to be built at Disney, which apparently had something to do with animals, something to do with animals that live in, apparently would have real animals from Africa and India, and tigers and lions and bears, oh my, but also would have a section about dinosaurs and another section about mythology and legendary animals like dragons and unicorns. And without disturbing anything, I just happened to notice that one of the diagrams was of a roller coaster that was an inverted roller coaster that did, loops and stuff that you hadn't had at Disney before this, that went through a sort of ruined castle and involved dragons, 2 of them, dueling, sort of. I thought, that's an interesting concept. And I also happened to notice a smaller, more kid-oriented ride featuring a flying unicorn. Oh, how interesting. That would be a very interesting park when they build this. Well, when they did build that park, those things weren't there. And here, going into this, in 1998, going into this building, I saw very, very, very familiar diagrams of rides involving an inverted roller coaster with dueling dragons in a ruined castle setting and a flying unicorn kiddie coaster. Gosh, where have I seen those before? And what I found out later was that there had been some, I don't recall if it was a layoff of Imagineers or some sort of contractual dispute and a bunch of them walked out. But for whatever reason, Disney lost a whole bunch of its Imagineers in the mid-90s, and they went to work for a firm that set itself up in a building next to that, remember that Orlando Fanatic building on Colonial downtown? Yeah, right next to it, there's a facility where these Imagineers formed their own firm, and they took some of the best ideas that they had at Disney and decided to use them for someplace else. They also built the Holy Land Adventure, by the way. So when Universal started making this Islands Adventure, guess who they hired, and guess whose designs were used, not at Disney for Animal Kingdom, but at Universal for Islands Adventure. Interesting. Anyway, that was something I discovered that night at Halloween Horror Nights. And it really doesn't have much to do with Halloween Horror Nights, but I thought it was kind of interesting, and you might want to know about that for future reference or whatever. now, especially since those things have been destroyed for Harry Potter. Yeah, that's the way things go. Non-plus chance and all of that. Anyway,